Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Out of Chess channel, and welcome to the Tata Steel Masters tournament in 2020 in Wijk, Netherlands. So today I wanted to show you a great game from the round 3. It is Fabiano Caruana against Yu Yangyi. Fabiano Caruana hasn't played many games, I think, in 2019. Maybe he saved himself for the forthcoming World Championship Challenger tournament. I think he's again the top favorite to win this Challengers and maybe try to challenge Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship match in 2020. So let's see the game. What happened here? Fabiano played with the white pieces with move e4. We have e5 by Yu Yangyi, knight to f3, knight to f6. We have the so-called Petrov's defense, and now d4. After knight takes e4, still common theory. Bishop to d3, kicking away the knight. Retreating with the knight to f6 again is not so good because you got d takes e5, so that's why the best way to proceed here is to move d5. And now Fabiano Caruana simply took knight to e5, and we have knight to d7, challenging Fabiano's knight in the center. Here Fabiano simply castled. After knight takes e5, we have d takes e5, and the pawn structure has now changed. This pawn structure after the trades of knights on e5 shows us really the direction of the attack for both sides, because here Fabiano Caruana has the pawn majority. He has a 4 versus 3 situation, so his main idea is to make progress here with some moves f4, f5. On the other hand, Yu Yangyi would love to play something like c5, b5, c4, and similar ideas. So the direction of the attack is clear here, so that's why you have to be fast on your side where you have the advantage. In the game, knight to c5 played by Yu Yangyi, and now bishop to e3. I like the style of Fabiano Caruana, not retreating with the bishop, because you have played already with your bishop. Playing with your piece many times in the opening is not so good. So here c6 played by Yu Yangyi, simply fixing the position on the queen side. If you take knight takes d3, it's not so powerful. I think we can take c takes d3 after something like c5. I think we can even proceed here with the move d4 after something like c4. Black has, of course, the advantage on the queen side, but I still think that white is simply faster with knight to c3 after something like bishop to e7, f4. It's really dangerous if you try bishop to f5, queen to f3 is perfectly fine with the preparation to play maybe something like g4, f5, f6, and similar ideas. So that's why here Yu Yangyi didn't react. He played the move c6, f4. You see Fabiano Caruana doesn't lose any tempos. He plays immediately very active on the king side. Knight takes d3, queen to d3, and now g6. Now knight to c3, we have b6 with the preparation to play the move c5. But it's not possible so far because your d5 pawn is hanging, so that's why Fabiano Caruana plays a very active move, rook to d1, which prevents this c5 move. Black would love to play c5 and then after that the move d4. This would be a very, very nice improvement of the pawns, and also maybe opening the light square diagonal for this light square bishop, because black has, of course, the advantage of the bishop pair in an early stage of the game, but Fabiano Caruana has, I think, a better pawn structure, a better activity with the pieces, so it's a battle, bishops versus pawn activity. So bishop to g7, we have b4, very cool positional move here by Fabiano Caruana. Now the c5 is basically a mission impossible here for black. Here with the move b4, Fabiano Caruana, I think, solves all of the positional problems on the queen side. In the game, bishop to f5 was played. a5 is not so powerful. If you try to crack the position, then b5 is I think losing immediately for black. If you try c takes b5, then queen to b5, and your d5 pawn is hanging, so I think this is completely lost. So b4, bishop to f5, getting this bishop on a very active square. Bishop, queen to e2, and now queen to c8 by Yu Yangyi. Of course, you have now some light square problems for Fabiano Caruana, and he solved this problems with the move h3. Here Yu Yangyi simply castled, and now g4, simply attacking the bishop to e6, and now finally this move b5. If you try again c takes b5, it's not so good, because here we can simply take this pawn, knight to d5, and again get use of our weakness here on b5, or you can take even the pawn here on b5. If bishop to d7 happens, then you have a very powerful outpost of the knight on d6, and I'm not seeing a clear way how black should counterplay this knight. Still, this is a weak pawn, and in the next moves we could try something like bishop to d4 and f5, a pawn breakthrough. So in the game, f5 was played by Yu Yangyi, trying to create sort of a blocking system on the king side, because as I said, Fabiano Caruana has the pawn majority on the king side, and here Fabiano simply took. E takes f6, bishop takes f6, and now a very important positional move, bishop to d4. One of the ideas to battle against the bishop pair is to get rid of at least one of these bishops. So here bishop to d4 forces really Yu Yangyi to trade off now the very powerful dark square bishop, and black is continuing the game with, okay, it's a good bishop, but still it's a little bit blocked out by its own pawns, and it's also an object of the defense of the d5. So Fabiano Caruana cracked the position with the move b5. Great positional game so far by the World Championship challenger from 2018, Fabiano. So here bishop to d4, rook to d4, we have finally c takes b5, and now knight to b5. Now there is this main weakness in black's position, it's the pawn on d5. Here bishop to d7 was played. Here Yu Yangyi simply gave up the defense of this pawn, because if you try something like, I don't know, rook to d8 to protect the pawn, then f5 is very tricky. After g takes f5, we have queen to e5. This is, I think, a completely lost game here for black. In the next move, we can try to take out this pawn, and now there are several dark square weaknesses in front of black's king, so I would love to play here from black's perspective. So in the game, bishop to d7, and now Fabiano simply takes out the pawn, rook takes d5, bishop takes b5, rook takes b5, and now queen to c3. This was very important for Fabiano Caruana to take with the rook, because now the rook can participate in the defense on the third rank. This h3 pawn is the main weakness. Now if you lose this pawn, this could be really tricky for white, so that's why rook to b3 solves all of the positional problems. The evaluation is still about equal here for both sides, but white is a pawn up, a pawn is a pawn, so you can go very calmly into the endgame. If we trade off maybe all of these pieces, or the rooks, the queen of the board, then of course white has a completely winning position, because in this particular endgame with one pawn up, black would be simply lost. So in the game queen to c5, we have king to g2. Now we have to just take care of your king, because the king is a little bit endangered. There are no some check possibilities for black. You can try maybe some further checks, but still there are many pieces in front of white's king, so you can always defend with queen to f3, rook to f3. Maybe you can also build sort of a battery on the f file, so many defensive resources also for Fabiano. So rook from a to e8, here queen to d2, we have rook to e4, and now rook to f2. Now this is also a very important idea to go up, level up, sort of. Now all of the pieces are on the second rank, because you have many of your pawns on the second rank. So one of the ideas is simply to move up rank higher, and simply try to defend all of your pawns and regroup a little bit with rook to f3, and try to hang onto your advantage, because the advantage is of course this extra pawn. Queen to c6, we have king to g3. You see how Fabiano plays very actively with the king, not allowing some discovered attack possibilities. Of course there was this threat to play rook to e2 and discoverly attacking the king and trap the queen. So rook to c4, we have rook to d3, rook to f7, and now rook to d6. Finally, now Fabiano Caruana plays a counter-attack with the rook. Now this activity of the rook is a huge one. After queen to c5, now comes a very nice move. You can pause the video and try to find really the best continuation here. It's the move which cracks the position, which opens now files for the queen, for diagonals for the queen, and it's a very nice move, f5. And here Yu Yangyi makes maybe a mistake. He played the move queen to e5. Maybe a better way is to proceed here rook to f8, simply getting your rook back. Try maybe then some check possibilities after rook to d7. We have queen to e5 now finally. But in the game queen to e5 was played, and if you take g takes f5, then it's a lost game for you, because then queen to g5 is very dangerous. If you try to cover with the rook, then we have queen to d8. You have to go with your king here on f7, and now you get checkmated with the move rook to f6. Here in this particular position, if you try king to h8, then again this very annoying check. After rook to f8, we have queen to f6. Is very tricky, and now after king to g8 we have queen to g5 again maybe some checks, but now rook to f5. Attacking the queen, you can maybe try some checks, but again king to h4 saves the situation for white. Now you can escape, and the serious threat is now the move rook to g5, and it's game over. So that's why queen to e5, but now king to g2. Again, no more checks by the queen are possible. Still you can maybe try again queen to e3, but again we can hide, I think, with this king, or even go here king to g1, because you cannot checkmate white's king all the time. You have to also take care of your back rank, because black has some back rank problems here with this rook. So that's why in the game rook to c3 was played with the preparation to play a very annoying check, queen to g3. In the game rook to f3, we have rook takes f3, king takes f3, and now rook to e7. Again, if you try this move g takes f5, again the same scenario happens. We have queen to g5. If you try to cover with the queen, then you get rook to d8, and you have to cover with the rook, and now we can simply trade off even more pieces. Rook takes f8, king takes f8, but now queen to g7, king takes g7, and now g takes f5, and this is now a completely lost endgame. We have this extra pawn, and this is a theoretical win for white. So in the game, after, as I said, king takes f3, rook to e7 was played. We have rook to d5, queen to e4 with a check, not a problem. We can defend, and here king to g7 was played. If you try queen to e3, it doesn't bring you so much. I think we can simply take queen takes e3, rook takes e3, and now king to f4. If you take the pawn, then we have this check. After king to f7, we have rook to d7 attacking the king, and we can also take the pawn. If you try king to f6 here, then you get checkmated by g5, so you would be forced to play something like king to f8. We can simply take first this pawn, f takes g6. After h takes g6, we can take another pawn, and now sneak in with our king here on g5, and this would be also, I think, a completely winning endgame here for white. So in the game, king to g7, as said, was played, and now rook to d6. Now we have several tactical possibilities here around the square g6. In the game, queen to e5 was played, but now king to h4. Very nice move by Fabiano Caruana. Again, if you try to trade off the queens, it's not a problem. We can simply play then after that rook to d7 and take another pawn. Still we have extra pawn here on the king side, so again trading off the queens doesn't bring you so much, because it leads into a simplified variation in which white is simplified. G takes f5 was played, but now queen to h6, here king to g8, and now again this very annoying move rook to d8. You can cover, but now rook to d7 was played. The problem is you don't have so good checks. If you try again queen to e1, then again we can hide, and now there is this serious checkmate threat on g7. So that's why in the game Yu Yangyi tried rook to e7. Now queen to g5 was played, but now again we have the same scenario, king to f7, and we can again simply trade off more pieces and go into a favorable endgame, which Fabiano Caruana did. G takes f5, king to f6, and now king to g4, king to e5, king to g5 was played, b5, another problem, but now c3, king to d5, and in this position Yu Yangyi resigned, because we can take also this pawn, have an extra pass pawn, and if the king goes on the king side, then we can simply grab these pawns and go into a favorable endgame. And again, this is, again, I'm pointing out, a theoretical win for white, and in this position Yu Yangyi, as mentioned, resigned. Okay, great game by Fabiano. He has still good chances, maybe even to win this tournament. I wish him all of the best, of course. We'll see what will happen in the continuation of the tournament. Magnus Carlsen so far played only 3 draws, but I think he's getting towards his world record for this non-losing streak. He hasn't lost so far 110 games. He needs one more game in order to break this absolute world record, and I wish also Magnus Carlsen the best. We'll continue to follow this very nice tournament. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games from the series with some more games by Fabi, Magnus Carlsen, Vishian, and then many more from some other tournaments. And you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.